to pretend you're viewing a room. It's dark. There's very little light coming into the room. A soldier is tied up to a chair. He's been beat. He's been tortured in every way imaginable to a man. He has not given up any information because he knows this is his duty. It's what he signed up to do. He's going to protect whatever information he has, and he knows America does not barter for prisoners. He's going to think of his mom, and he's thinking of his state, and he wishes he could get back home, but he's very willing to die there to withhold that information from the enemy. Now we're going to go to another room. It looks exactly the same. A soldier's tied up to a chair. He's not gagged, but he is blindfolded. And as he sits there blindfolded, barely touched at all for days, he's sitting there listening to a woman soldier being tortured in every way possible by the enemy. He's listening to this, and all he can think is, if I just give them the information, they will stop. And finally, after days of listening, all he can think of is his sister or his mother back home and how he wants to rescue her. So he gives the information, and in that moment that he gives the information, hundreds of lives and security is put at risk. This is why our soldiers in the United States military worry about women in combat role positions. When they get in the front lines, there's a risk of captivity. It's not about who's stronger. It's not about who can complete the training. It's what would happen if they were taken captive. Do I have proof that this ever happened or that it would happen? No. Because even if it did happen, it would be classified information. No one would know about it. But this is what the young men fear. How do I know this? Because my son is in the United States Army, and I've talked about it with him and other soldiers. Why should Americans care? Because it's our brothers, our fathers, our sisters, our mothers, our cousins, our friends, the people that we love, and it's our nation's defense. 9 months ago, the President and Secretary of Defense opened up all combat role positions in the United States military to women. I intend to discuss with you why several of the fighting force think that this was not good and it was just a move for women's promotions and will weaken the United States military. The Commandant of the Marine Corps recommended certain jobs not be open to females in the military after an extensive study on gender integration. It's not discrimination, it's biology. Combat experienced female veterans say that women cannot meet the physical standards, and allowing women into combat roles will weaken the United States military. The Commandant of the Marine Corps recommended that women be excluded from certain frontline jobs. Marine General Joseph Dunford submitted his recommendation to the Navy Secretary Ray Mavis, who immediately denied even looking at it. He wouldn't even discuss it. He said that it was going to happen, and it did. Dunford's decision was based on a study the Marines did, which concluded that male-only units performed better than gender-integrated units. The male-only infantry shot more accurately, could carry more weight, and move more quickly through specific tactical movements. It also concluded that women had higher injury rates than men, including stress fractures, probably from the weight of the packs that they carried. Women make up less than 8% of our Marine Corps. The Marines are the most strenuously trained, longest and hardest basic training, and are the first into combat. They say once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. It's not discrimination, it's biology. Daniel L. Davis, a highly decorated lieutenant colonel, wrote a detailed article against why women should be in combat roles. The main points of his article were close quarters, sexual tensions, sexual assaults, separate quarters for women would not be available in combat, heavy packs, less physical endurance. One of the quotes from Lieutenant Colonel Davis really hit home with me. There are currently no women in the National Basketball Association, the National Football League, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, or any other professional sports leagues that are male-only units. The reason for their absence has nothing to do with discrimination, but is flatly rooted in the fact that women are biologically not able to perform physically at the same level as men. Yeah, you're probably thinking, but that's all a bunch of men, and that's all their opinions. Well, women veterans feel the same way. Jude Eden became a Marine in 2004, deployed with the 8th. Captain Katie Petrino, a company grade 1302 combat engineer, officer with 5 years of active duty experience and 2 combat deployments, one to Iraq and the other to Afghanistan, both took the position against women being in combat roles. June Eden said, "We need our combat units to be the most lethal fighting force our tax dollars can buy. Adding women creates more danger for everyone and risk compromising missions." Eden listed all of the many areas where men excelled and women constantly fell apart. Infantry standards, lower fitness standards, illness, women have far higher rates of injury, non-availability, this is their monthly, they can't deploy, non-deployability, wear out faster, co-ed units are perpetually trying to juggle sexual dynamics, relationships, accommodations, fraternization, rape, pregnancy, hygiene, and much more, while maintaining troop welfare and good order and discipline, and of course accomplishment. The leaders fight all of this, or struggle to deal with all of this. Eden feels women are being selfish in asking to be in all the combat roles just for their own personal career development. She tells a story about how when she was in combat, ISIS hit a convoy, which was an entire unit, because they saw women in the caravans. And they were women soldiers, and they hit the convoy, and they managed to kill 3 women soldiers, one of those being a single mother. They hit that convoy specifically because there were women soldiers fighting. Captain Katie Petrino wrote a fascinating article, "Get Over It, We Are Not All Created Equal," for the Marine Corps Gazette, in which she lists her qualifications. The captain was extremely physically qualified. She could probably outmaneuver any male that I've ever met. And she describes what combat did to her body, how her body broke down in 16-hour days in the desert fighting. Her body completely broke down. She came back and she had all kinds of stress on her body. She was completely infertile. She had all kinds of things that happened to her body while she was over there. She compares the biology of women in combat to the men and describes how the muscle mass on a man naturally helps them to endure the physical pressures of war. She states that her main question about women being in combat is the longevity. Could they survive it? Whereas women can, the men become more physically fit, the women break down. I was the senior Marine making the final decisions on construction concerns, with 24-hour base defense and leading 30 Marines at any given time. The physical strain of enduring combat operations and the stress of being responsible for the lives and well-being of such a young group in an extremely kinetic environment were compounded by lack of sleep, which ultimately took a physical toll on my body that I could not have foreseen. Women are not physically or psychologically designed to kill. Women are made to nurture. And when they do kill, they have higher rates of PTSD and they have a harder time in therapy. A country should trust a leader who has served his country long enough to be in charge of a branch of the military to make decisions. Men and women are not biologically created the same. The cost of having someone who may become physically exhausted or injured, the distractions to the male soldiers, or the lifetime of therapy a woman might need afterwards is too much because it will weaken our military. The combat trades are the most physically and mentally demanding in the military. Combat soldiers work outdoors. They are exposed to extreme environments for extended periods of times without rest or shelter. The infantry, combat engineers, armor, and field artillery contribute to the main objective of engaging and overcoming the enemy in combat. They are responsible for ensuring battlefield mobility and denying the same to the enemy. These jobs are stressful, and the risk of physical injury or death is always present. Are we as Americans really ready to see our wives, mothers, daughters, sisters come home with those cherished flags draped over their coffins for the sake of gender inequality?